Before the main story begins, the film opens with a quiet yet unsettling sequence. A figure is seen breaking stones into smaller pieces and then burying them across different areas of the forest floor. We don't see their face, and no dialogue is spoken. The act feels ritualistic, as if the person is planting something, not just hiding it. The story is set in a near-future world devastated by a deadly pandemic. Society has collapsed into scattered zones, and strict quarantine protocols are in place to prevent the spread of the disease. The cities are no longer safe, and remote wilderness areas have become government-monitored zones. We are introduced to Martin Lowry, a scientist arriving at a quarantine outpost on the edge of a dense forest near Bristol, England. His mission seems straightforward: to assist with an agricultural research project aimed at solving the global food crisis caused by the pandemic. However, Martin has a personal motive. He wants to find Dr. Olivia Wendell, a fellow scientist who disappeared in these woods months ago. Martin and Olivia shared a personal connection before she vanished, though this detail is unknown to the authorities. At the outpost, Martin undergoes strict medical screening. He is sanitized, tested for the virus, and questioned by those stationed there. These workers have been isolated for a long time and follow only government instructions, with little contact with the outside world. They're wary, clinical, and uninterested in Martin's actual research goals. Still, he's approved for entry into the forest. Because no vehicles are allowed in the zone, Martin must travel on foot. He is assigned a park ranger, Alma, who will guide him through the 2-day journey to Olivia's last known research site deep in the forest. Before leaving, Martin notices an unsettling old painting on the wall of the cabin. It depicts strange rituals, people worshipping, and a figure called Parnag Feg, the supposed spirit of the forest. Alma tells him this is just an old local legend used to scare children. People once believed the forest had a soul, and Parnag Feg was its presence. Martin and Alma don't believe in the myth, but the painting leaves an impression. Martin, concerned about the missing scientists, including Olivia, asks the outpost staff why they weren't tracked using GPS or communication equipment. The staff explains that the forest has no reliable signal, and the previous researchers entered without a guide, which increased the chances of getting lost. They imply that the forest can be disorienting and unnaturally quiet, often affecting people psychologically. The next day, as they begin their hike into the forest, Alma mentions that Dr. Olivia Wendell had sent occasional letters when she first began her work out here, but no one has heard from her in the last 6 months. Martin remains silent about his personal connection to her. Officially, he is here to assist with agricultural research. The mission is to study the forest's unusually fertile soil, which scientists believe could hold the key to solving future food shortages. They set up camp as night falls. Martin, who isn't used to the wilderness, struggles to sleep due to the strange, echoing sounds of animals and birds deep in the jungle. In the morning, they continue their journey and come across a burnt tent. Alma quietly recalls that a family once camped there and never returned. She suspects this tent belonged to them. It's a grim reminder that not everyone who enters this forest comes back. By evening, they set up camp again. But that night, something goes horribly wrong. Flashing lights explode around them, disorienting and blinding. They are attacked by an unseen assailant. Martin and Alma are beaten, knocked unconscious, and their supplies are looted. When they regain consciousness the next morning, they find their camp destroyed, food, shoes, and equipment gone. Only their lives were spared. It's now clear this wasn't the work of animals. Someone human and dangerous is watching them. With no gear and Martin injured, they're forced to keep moving. But the deeper they go, the stranger and more silent the forest becomes. No birds, no wind, just stillness. And then suddenly, they meet a man. He introduces himself as Zach, a hermit who claims he saw them earlier and wants to help. Though wary, Martin and Alma, desperate and vulnerable, have no choice but to accept his offer. Zach appears calm, soft-spoken, and oddly philosophical. He claims he's been living in the forest for a long time, away from the chaos of the world, and, to some extent, away from reality itself. At the camp, Alma and Martin noticed that Zach was well-equipped. It looked like he had been living there for quite a while. Despite being cut off from the rest of the world, he seemed oddly content in this isolation. Zach noticed the injury on Martin's leg. It was deep. He quickly gathered materials and dressed the wound with practiced hands. Then, he gave them new clothes, food, water, and finally, a strange drink, some kind of sweet syrup. But something was off. Moments later, Alma and Martin realized the drink was laced with a sedative. Zach had drugged them. The man who seemed helpful was only pretending. As they lost consciousness, Zach removed their clothes, dressed them in odd garments he'd made, and staged disturbing photos that made it look like they were dead, as if part of some dark ritual. When the two awoke, they found themselves tied to chairs. Panic set in. They pleaded with Zach to let them go, but he simply smiled, cold, detached. "It's not that simple," he said. "You think you can just leave? That's not possible." He showed them the photos he'd taken, and both of them were horrified. The next day, Zach kept them tied outside under the sun, speaking cryptically about an invisible power that lived in the forest. He claimed he could communicate with it. "Your arrival here wasn't an accident," he insisted. "The world outside is already dying." And with that chilling prophecy, the nightmare only deepened. Alma and Martin were still trying to make sense of what was happening when the nightmare deepened. That night, Zach approached Martin with unsettling news. His leg wound had become badly infected. "I'll need to cut off a few of your toes," he said bluntly, holding up a crude axe. Martin and Alma pleaded with him to stop, terrified at the thought. But Zach was beyond reason. Without hesitation, he swung the axe and severed 2 of Martin's toes. Martin screamed in agony before falling unconscious from the pain. Earlier, when they were tied to chairs, Martin had noticed a small blade nearby. Whispering to Alma, he had told her about it, hoping they could use it to cut through their ropes. But before they could act, Zach returned. Hours later, Zach dragged Martin outside. This time, he wasn't just playing doctor. He was preparing for a ritual sacrifice. Dressing Martin in strange robes, he placed symbolic items around him as if preparing an offering. Meanwhile, inside the tent, Alma managed to grab the blade and cut herself free. She quickly untied Martin's restraints too. When Zach, sensing something was off, returned to check, Alma ambushed him with whatever strength she had left. She struck hard, wounding him. Seizing the moment, Alma ran to Martin and helped him to his feet. They had already discussed a plan, split up and run in different directions. It was their only chance. Despite his injuries, Martin fled into the woods. Zach, bleeding but still driven by madness, went after Alma. But just as he took aim with a bow to shoot her down, Martin screamed from a distance, drawing Zach's attention, luring him away to give Alma a chance to escape. Now hunted like prey, Martin tried to stay hidden in the dense forest as Zach stalked him with an axe in hand. But in the distance, Martin saw lights and a microphone. Desperate, he shouted for help into the mic. Then, something unexpected happened. A figure appeared, a woman in a survival suit. She pulled Martin to safety, and in a stunning twist, she revealed herself to be Olivia, the very scientist Martin had come searching for all along. She rushed Martin back to her camp, treating his wounds. But even then, Martin couldn't stop worrying about Alma. Driven by that fear, he set out to find her. And against all odds, he did. Olivia tended to their wounds with care, but as Martin described what Zach had done, a shadow of pain crossed her face. She was horrified. The man who had once meant everything to her had turned into something monstrous. Martin mentioned that on his way through the forest, he had seen several bodies. "He's a killer," he said grimly. He then asked the question that had been bothering him for a while. "Why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you contact anyone?" Olivia sighed, as if the weight of months pressed down on her. "I've been too consumed," she admitted. "Something remarkable is here. Something that could change everything. I've spent months researching it, recording it. There wasn't time to send a single message." She looked at Martin's infected wound and frowned. "We need to cauterize it." Martin braced himself, once again enduring searing pain for survival. Later, a revelation shook him. Zach was Olivia's husband. She explained that he used to be part of her team. They had arrived together, full of purpose and curiosity. But things changed after they discovered a strange black stone buried deep in the forest. "It wasn't just a rock," Olivia said. "It was something else." She had set up sensors and microphones throughout the area and discovered patterns, signals, perhaps even a language, coming from the trees themselves. She believed the forest was alive in a way they couldn't yet understand. Not metaphorically, literally. The trees were communicating. "I've been recording the sounds for months," she said. "They follow a pattern. I've built a language model to decode them. I don't know what exactly this force is, but it wants to speak to us." As a fellow scientist, Martin could hear it too. The patterns in the recordings, the unnatural frequencies. It wasn't just noise, it was intentional, purposeful. Zach and Olivia had both become obsessed with the mystery, but their paths had diverged dramatically. "At first we worked together," Olivia continued. "But when we found the ancient stone, everything shifted. We uncovered strange carvings nearby, even a worn, ancient book. When we translated it, we realized this wasn't just science anymore. This was something beyond it." Zach, seduced by the arcane and the inexplicable, had left her side. He had chosen belief over inquiry, ritual over research, worship over reason. "He began to believe in the power," Olivia said, her voice hollow. "He gave himself to it. And now he thinks sacrifices will please it. That's why he tried to kill you. He was offering you to the Force." Martin was stunned. "But I kept going," Olivia said, "with science, with observation, and I think I'm finally close. Maybe now I'll understand what it's trying to say. Maybe I'll unlock the truth." She looked out toward the forest, her eyes filled with a mix of awe and dread. "This place, it's all connected," she whispered. "The trees, the plants, the sounds. It's like one vast living network." After hearing Olivia's explanation, Alma pulled Martin aside. She was deeply uneasy. "Something's not right," she whispered. "She's talking just like Zach. Strange ideas, mysterious voices. What if they're in this together? We need to get out of here, and we need to take her with us, in case she tries anything." Martin, though hesitant, agreed. He decided to keep up the appearance of trust while planning their escape. But then Olivia said something that stopped him cold. She asked, "Martin, do you really think you came here by choice? Or did it feel like something was pulling you here? Like a thought planted in your mind?" She stared at him intensely. "Before you came, did your ears ring?" Martin was stunned. "Yes," he admitted. "They did." Olivia nodded, as if confirming a long-held suspicion. "It happened to both me and Zach too. That ringing, that call, it wasn't natural. That force in the forest, it draws people in. But why? That's the part we still don't know." Despite her warnings, Martin chose not to believe her. He and Alma decided they couldn't wait any longer. They had to leave, now. But as they prepared to flee, the forest responded. A thick, pale mist began rising from the ground, seeping into the camp like silent poison. It wasn't just fog, it was a gas. Breathing it was dangerous. Olivia warned them to wait, but Martin and Alma insisted they had to try. They asked Olivia for one of her protective suits. She agreed, reluctantly. Alma would go first. To keep her tethered, Martin tied a rope around her waist, just in case she lost consciousness. She barely got a few feet into the fog before it began to affect her. Dazed, she stumbled, eyes wide with horror as she started hallucinating. Martin quickly pulled her back. She was trembling, shaken, and kept muttering, "I saw it. It was huge. It was watching me." That night, just when they thought things couldn't get worse, Zach returned. He stood at the edge of the camp, holding a flare, his face lit by its glow. Alma and Martin froze, terrified. Had he come to kill them? Olivia stepped out to speak with him. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. She said Zach claimed he could now communicate directly with the force in the forest, and he believed that Martin was the key. "He says the entity wants to speak," Olivia explained, "and it can only happen through you." She handed Martin a dark, thick liquid contained in a carved vessel. "You'll need to drink this." Martin and Alma exchanged looks. The truth was sinking in. Zach and Olivia were aligned now. Whatever lines separated reason from madness had blurred, but Martin had no choice. He couldn't risk Alma's life. Not again. She had already saved him once. So he gave in. Together, they sat beneath one of the towering trees. Martin took the cup and drank. Olivia believed that Martin wasn't just drawn to the forest. He had been summoned by it. She was convinced the entity wanted to speak through him. But before anything more could happen, a piercing, shrill sound echoed through the air. Both Martin and Olivia dropped to their knees, clutching their heads in pain. Alma, trying to reach Olivia for help, stumbled into her private workspace, and what she found left her frozen in horror. Photographs, dozens of them, all of the people Zach had killed. Olivia had documented everything, almost obsessively. It wasn't research anymore. It was worship. Alma realized the truth. Olivia wasn't just like Zach. She might be worse. Fueled by fear and fury, Alma confronted her. A violent struggle broke out, and Alma wounded Olivia before escaping into the forest. Meanwhile, Zach was closing in on Martin, axe in hand, ready to finish what he'd started. But Alma arrived just in time. First, she blinded him by jabbing his eye. Then, without hesitation, she ended it permanently. But victory came at a cost. Toxic mist began to seep across the forest. The strange gas spread faster than before, and Alma was caught in it. Trapped and choking, her mind unraveled. She began seeing impossible visions, surreal, terrifying, otherworldly. Time lost meaning, and when morning finally came, she was no longer the same. Alma woke with vacant eyes and an unnatural calm. Standing before her was Olivia, weak, trembling, but smiling. "Thank you," she whispered, and with her final breath, collapsed. It was as if a shadow had been lifted from her. The entity had moved on, and now it had found a new vessel. Alma turned to Martin, her voice soft but hollow, her eyes distant, yet fixed. "Come on," she said. "Let me take you out of the forest." But something in her tone had changed. Something deeply, irreversibly wrong. And that's where the story ends. Not with escape, but with a haunting realization. The forest doesn't let you leave untouched.